Hello, everyone. Welcome again to today's webinar on building an engaging and effective remote workforce. My name is Kevin. I work behind the scenes and I will be your facilitator for today. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to drop me a note in the chat. So before we get into our presentations by our two presenters, I just want to welcome everyone to submit any questions that you may have during the presentation, and we will have a Q&A sessions at the very end. And also, I want to mention that we will be sharing the presentations with you all after the webinar. So don't worry about screenshotting the screens. We will be sharing the slides afterwards. So to start, I just want to do a quick introduction of our two speakers for today. To start off, we will have Natellie Sun, who is the Managing Director of Search and Selection for Randstad Hong Kong. We also have Jiejun, I call her JJ, who is our Principal Head of Talent and Employee Experience for Mercer Hong Kong. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Natellie to begin our presentation for today.
All right, fantastic. Thanks, Kevin, for the introduction. So both of us are in green, so it's hard to differentiate. But my name is Natellie Sun. I'm the Managing Director for Search and Selection in Randstad, which we operate, globally across the world. But just a very quick intro, across Greater China, we have over 600 staff that service across 4 business lines, from RPO to contracting to permanent professional hiring to outplacements. So I wanted to jump into it because we've got a lot to cover over the next hour or so. So here, I guess we're here to talk about building and engaging an effective remote workforce. And I think it's very important for us to hear, for us to note that last year we used to say the new norm. Everyone was adjusting to new ways and a different method of going about work. And I think through a lot of data and a lot of conversations and through what's happened with COVID last year, it can be said that it is the new standard. Remote work or hybrid and flexible work arrangement is the new norm. And so I guess this then leads us into we all really need to sort of find a way to adjust on how we adapt to this new way of working and this new environment we need to navigate through. So very interesting is also to share with everyone. Employees expect flexibility and they expect this new work from home. But actually, when we were looking through some of the data in terms of a survey that we conducted a couple months ago, 40% of people actually said that work from home had made them more productive. So that means 60% are still struggling or still finding their way through work from home. And I think this sets a very good standard for us to really think about as the HR community or line managers. How do we accept this new norm? There's no way about it, but how do we do better in terms of finding talent, engaging talent, and skilling talent? So just to further emphasize a little bit more around this, we recently did a survey across 16 HR leaders, and they all agreed that hybrid and flexible work is the long-term solution. And although we all agree that full-time remote work is not possible for all industries, so if you're in retail frontline, for example, or you're doing something quite physical, it is not possible. But outside that, hybrid going forward, and 100% of all the 6 HR leaders had said that they don't believe 100% remote working works. So it's still very important, whilst we're balancing the two ways of working, that we do think about the importance of in-person collaboration and how in-person also builds work relationships as well. So how to build an effective remote workforce? So this is about finding talent. Top talent is searching for a company the same way they would with any other purchasing decision. So it's quite interesting for us to have a think about where we find talent and how talent finds us. So with technology, I was looking at the iPhone 13 that's coming out very soon. And I did a little bit of research and thought, okay, when was the first iPhone? It was 2007. Since then, I would say no one can live without their smartphone, and it's really changed the way we go about business and behaviors. And off the back of that, to this statement, then it's also changed customer behavior. So they really think, okay, the reviews, the likes, these things, they do a lot more research before making that purchase decision. So similar, when we're thinking about building our candidates and our talent for our companies, we need to also think about how talents are making their decisions about finding their next employer. And so they too will be looking at the reviews and the likes and the branding perception of your company before they say yes and accept that role. So I guess this then leads to us that we really need to think about how our employer brand is positioned and our digital presence, because this is where they're getting a lot of this information from. And this segues, I guess, into our next point, is where candidates look for jobs. So we want to find talent. We need to know where they look for employment. And each year Randstad does an employer brand research. And one of the questions we ask candidates is where they look for jobs. Number one and number two is recruiters and job portals. So year on year, I would say it hasn't changed. These are the top two ways people look for jobs. But very interesting, through COVID, we have definitely seen a big change. What's changed? Google, social media, they've increased in terms of an avenue to find jobs. And I guess we're sitting on our couch, working from home. It's much easier now to do a quick Google. No one's looking behind your screen to have a little bit of a poke around and a search when the candidate is thinking about looking to move. And then obviously social media, people are trying to value a little bit around culture and vibe. So hence, I think a lot of the social media has become increasingly more important. And especially when we look at this and we look at the Gen Zs and the millennials, which are the upcoming workforce entering, their top few channels are more digital based rather than face-to-face traditional methods. So have a think about what is the target market of where you want to find your talent. So if you're looking for someone that is more of a generation of a baby boomer, you might consider more of a traditional route. And then if you're thinking about targeting the younger generation, Google, social media, these digital platforms will become essential to the way you can attract talent to your company. So then, taking digital in mind, I really wanted to take this opportunity to share what you could do as the HR community trying to attract talent for your business. So the first thing is social media. So Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, these are all various channels your organization can look for. And very recently we spoke to LinkedIn, and only last month they increased 16,000 members in Hong Kong alone. So it's a pretty significant jump for Hong Kong market, showing that people are more active, but also people are increasing using online channels to be able to find roles. Secondly, I think just on social media, it's a great opportunity to work with your marketing team and target the people that you want to hire and have social media campaigns based off data. So that's an easy win for making sure you get the right people on board. But on top of that, I think social media is very, very powerful to send the message of your culture into the market. What's it like working for your organization? What are the type of people you guys want to hire? What is the great engagement things that your company does? Yeah. And I guess the second other thing we wanted to share with you or highlight is digital presence with your website. So again, it goes back to sharing stories and creating a little bit of a journey and allowing candidates when they visit your website to see what you have on offer. There's other very low-hanging fruits I think a company can do to help attract. So as an example, is having a look at your ATS, or how candidates come through as an applicant into your company's database. And we did a little bit of a search. I applied as a candidate on a banking website once, and it literally took me, I would say, 15 minutes before end to send. And I think if you're targeting young generations, I don't think they have the best of patience, or they extremely love your company that they really want to apply to go through a 15-minute process. So these are things that we can always think about when thinking about attracting talent. And I think maybe another example I'd want to share with everyone is REBA, so Randstad Employer Brand Research. We do that every year. And one of the winners this year, a property company, they imported a chatbot on their website. And the whole idea was to be able to capture talent into their website and make sure that every person that visits their website, they have an opportunity to be able to promote a job to that candidate. So these are a couple of ideas that as HR we can think about of increasing the effectiveness of our website. The third thing I want to sort of highlight is just around reviews. 9 out of 10 customers read reviews. That's quite powerful for us to all think about. So focus a little bit around Google My Business. The better or the more ratings your company has on Google, the higher ranking it has, and therefore it appears at a more the higher level on a website. And that's quite important when you're looking to attract a vast talent pool. And then obviously Glassdoor. People do write reviews. So regularly as HR, we should be checking it and having a look and commenting on some of these things. And I think maybe a very easy exercise you could do is also thinking about social selling and thinking about how you can train your employees or get internal influencers or advocates for your brand to also help promote. And also to help engage and like and share some of the posts to gain that traction and a wider audience for your organization. And lastly, I think just job portals, which is still digital and still the second most popular way of candidates looking for jobs. Again, I think this is a great way to then making sure the little details make a difference. So using banners, infographics, images, and ensuring that you explain the most you can and share as much as you can on that particular job, on that job portal, when you've got a split second to leave that image or leave a message to that candidate. And if you do a great job, makes a difference whether they continue to click on it and apply or move on to the next job. So as you guys can see, digital is here and we need to find a new way to recruit. And we need to understand that talents are also looking for jobs in a different way. So have a digital strategy for your company. Now, next, I really want to emphasize, though digital, and going back to the original slides about saying 100% remote is maybe impossible to build connections. I think humans' natural behaviors, I think it's important that we still have the human touch. And so don't forget, recruiters are still a great way for word of mouth and having meetings and getting your brand out there. Secondly, I think there is great opportunity. If you really are onboarding a remote workforce, think about a physical office. Let the employee get a feel for what it would be like to work in the environment, but maybe meet a few people and then grab some connections through that way in your campaigns. And then second and lastly, I think don't forget you've got your internal staff as the best people to refer people to your organization, and think about partnerships. Think about campus recruitment, but there are other partnerships companies can explore to get to a larger audience that is still face-to-face and using that traditional touch to be able to generate that brand and therefore the word of mouth. So whilst thinking about hiring, we know from a talent strategy and from a digital strategy to attract people into your organization, I still also think it's very important for us to talk about this topic about talent composition. So traditionally, I would say Hong Kong, we work with mainly predominantly perm staff for our companies. But generations and especially COVID has really shifted the way we think about how we arrange the people that work in our organizations. And as you guys can see, 32% of organizations are replacing full-time employees with contingent workers. So that's contracting. People are becoming more open to the thought about having a flexible workforce. So when it is a talent short market and we're all fighting for the same talent, we need to be creative in order to get the people on board, in order for them to help us grow our organizations. So think about contracting for project work. Now the young generation talk a lot around flash jobs and wanting variety and flexibility. So maybe freelancers could work for some assignments as well, and also certain projects. The other two things I really encourage companies to think about is job sharing, 2 people working one job, or alternatively, part-time. So there's opportunities for us to really think, do we really need this person to work full-time? Then this could be the perfect balance. And then I think just on top of this, I think it's really important. It is also could be a way to retain talent by offering these options. And lastly, going back to remote working, having a remote workforce, global talent. So we could have a workforce overseas, or we could start off onboarding our workforce overseas and then later relocating them to Hong Kong. Or lastly, it could be a case where a lot of clients, I think a lot of companies are looking for people that have local market experience, but not necessarily is it a must. So originally, maybe you weren't so open to have a talent from overseas, but maybe now is the chance that we can find talent from overseas and import them into Hong Kong. So then thinking about talent, then we move on to, we've got the people on board. Now it is super important to engage with this workforce. And it's probably one of the biggest questions for a lot of companies. And I think it's not a question of why do we need to have a way to manage hybrid or remote work arrangements, but it is more on how can we do this and how can we do it better, which is very, very key to how we manage things going forward, because I think we have managed to work with it, adapt to it. We do okay. I think everyone is sort of at this stage, but could we do better? And could we make our remote workforce more productive and more engaged so they are more productive, right? So these are the big questions we sort of need to navigate and answer. But before that, we do need to have a look at what are our employees saying to us? What are they really looking for? So we did a work monitor survey in March this year. And off the back of that, actually 36% of the people that were surveyed are asking for companies to provide more policies on work hours for better work-life balance. So this goes back to some people saying that we work really long hours, we work from home, the mental stress, the mental health, these things we do need to balance. And it is up to us as employers and companies to give them guidelines on how to manage this and how others should manage it as well for these people. Secondly, remote work allowance. Again, something that we can look at from what employees are asking companies to provide. And this can be, I don't know about you guys, but definitely since working from home, my electricity bill has gone up a lot. So it could be something quite simple as giving a small allowance to help people adjust to this remote work. And the other things we can really think about is protocols for hybrid work, but just the basics, I think, as a company can provide is really software. So maybe a telephone system that is on their laptops rather than using the hard phones, if anyone's still using those. But we can install IP phone software into your laptops to make that easier for people to work from home. And lastly, I think just from equipment perspective, an easy basic thing, but surprisingly, I think a lot of people are still asking for a little bit more support around this. So knowing what they want, what they're hoping companies can provide, we can use this as a baseline to have discussions and to formulate policies and to formulate support for our staff and to help them be more engaged and be more equipped to be more productive in their jobs. In fact, 50% say it has been a struggle to learn new skills to adapt to the pandemic. So I'll go into the next section, but JJ will also touch on reskilling and skills as her part after this. So I wanted to give everyone 3 very simple takeaways around how do we engage with our workforce that is on remote. So one is definitely we can look at HR incentives and think about benefits to create a more positive working experience. So you see a lot of companies, Nike, LinkedIn, Facebook, Shell, that are listed on the screen. So some ideas that HR can think about is paid part-time to support mental health. I really like the second one about no meetings day. Everyone's got Zoom fatigue, although we're on Zoom, but we have a little bit of Zoom fatigue at times. Funds to help people support with equipment for work from home. And lastly, one to share from us here. We provide onboarding welcome packs. People from work from home, we wanted them to feel a little bit nice and sprout ideas. So we sent each employee a little plant at home just to make the environment a little bit better and just to put a smile on people's faces. So one simple thing HR can think about. Secondly, measuring employee productivity. Now, KPIs, or now we say OKRs, yeah, about performance and key results are things that we need to think about how we measure and change the perception. So no longer are we able to hover and look at whether this person is on the desk and manage them from a micro perspective. So we really need to think about how we measure the performance long term. And my last point I want people to think about in terms of engagement is thinking about new ways of helping and supporting your employees. And this can come from various ways. So Klook has a great example, for example, in the second one around building communities and virtual communities. I know I've tried like a happy hour online to get people engaged or to get people to sort of know each other and play a few games, etc. Using chatbots and technology to be able to send out messages and communicate. When you don't have the FaceTime, then we need to rely on technology to be able to do so. And lastly, I think it's really, really important is to think about how we upskill our people and train people to manage the engagement. And to start off with, I think it's always around the training component, right? And so Randstad, for example, we did an on-demand learning platform with different modules, learn as you go, but it's also to help people upskill themselves, but also manage it through a new way of working for them as well. So to finish off, in general, we don't expect people to be micromanaged, which we just kind of touched on. As long as their KPIs are green, we're okay. But the key to this message is being able to trust our employees is an important part of our culture. And so I think as organizations moving from a traditional method of management to this new way of managing, I think we need to all learn and adapt and try to trust because I think trust goes a long way with staff and really is very key to winning the hearts of our employees. And if you retain your best talent, you don't need to go back to step one and find new talents. Yeah. So I think I'm going to finish off here just on time, and then I'm going to pass this on to JJ to share a little bit more around skilling and also engaging the workforce.
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Natalie, for that. I thought it was really nice how you were able to collect all those practical insights across different organizations. I think all of us are really in Asia Pacific, really adapting to the new normal of remote working. And it's a constant learning journey. I find it so useful to interact with different companies and learning in this space. For just a little bit about Mercer before I start. So we're one of the leading HR advisory consultancies that operate in 130 countries. We're all about redefining the future of work, investment outcomes, and unlocking the real outcomes for health and well-being. What I would love to talk about today, as Natalie mentioned, is a little bit more about talent strategy and reskilling. We're really seeing this as a major pattern happening across organizations. So I really want to start with a beautiful photo of Hong Kong. Today it's a little bit gloomy and overcast out there in the window, but this photo right here just reminds me of what a perfect day is like in Hong Kong. And I like this photo because it reminds me to zoom out a little bit. You know, when we have all these conversations about the remote workforce, we're seeing it in the eyes of the employee. And at the same time, there is a lot of macro trends that is happening on this front as well. So a massive macro trend that we know about is that as organizations are accelerating to the futures, we're really seeing that organizations are very focused on upskilling and reskilling their workforce in order to be sustainable and in order to be agile. Why this is happening, a lot of us know already. In the last few years, we've been talking about the Industrial Revolution 4.0. We know that a lot of jobs are being displaced by technology, and we also know that a lot of new job opportunities are being created, such as digital marketing, data science is up on the uptrend over the next few years. We can see that the World Economic Forum actually estimates that globally, 50% of all employees, that's you and me as well, actually need to be reskilled, because the reality is that we have to work with digital and automation in a lot of the jobs we do. In my previous life as a trivia, I started out as an enforcement officer, and everything was completely manual, downloading and calculating things on Excel. But, the last 10 years, the big data transformation has really changed things. And you can even see industries like enforcement officers being forensic scientists with PhDs in data analytics. So that's really the future of work that we're seeing now. What we're seeing in our global talent trend is that the number one challenge to transformation is really that we lack the workforce capabilities and skills. And the wonderful thing is that we are seeing investments in this space. Maybe 2021 is a little bit tricky with the pandemic, but certainly over the next few years, we're seeing organizations putting a lot of resources in upskilling. So you can see that 41% of the executives in our recent survey of 2,700 respondents actually believe that upskilling is the way to go in terms of the highest return of investment when it comes to talent. And our point of view as well is that if you have flexible work models, this is absolutely critical to ensure that as you're upskilling your people, they actually have the internal mobility and the structure to actually move within the organization. So we're seeing in the pandemic that when people are talking about organizational agility, they're talking essentially about having the skills and the growth mindset to be able to form new cross-functional teams in areas to serve customers very quickly. So in the pandemic, you had a lot of retail organizations that needed to quickly deliver digital services and scrambling and putting teams together to make that happen. You also saw a lot of big organizations upskilling their retail frontline employees to actually provide digital services via phone calls or the platforms in order to meet the demand in this space. So as Natalie talked already, we know, right? We're consumers who have an amazing seamless experience when it comes to buying and talking to our friends through the best technology. And we bring our whole selves to the workplace. What we expect as a consumer, we expect at the workplace as well. And while this creates pressure on the technology and the HR teams to deliver great experiences, I also believe it's an exciting opportunity because we have so many options now on the table as the technology firms are really ramping up in this space. The key thing to share here is to be inclusive. I think when we think about the remote workforce, the reality is that it's going to be very differentiated. You're going to have some people choosing to be 100% remote. You're going to have people choosing hybrid in office or working from home or even somewhere else like a WeWork. And then when we talk about remote, I would also like to talk about flexible work arrangements like part-time. So basically your employees are distributed, they're working anywhere, anytime, different places, and you really need to create the experience that they can collaborate seamlessly wherever and however they're working. So I like to draw back as well to look holistically about the employee experience. So here's Mercer's point of view about the employee value proposition, which is really about your brand, how you're attracting the talent, and how you're helping your talent thrive within your organization. So at a fundamental basis, we have the foundation of inclusive competitive compensation benefits. I would say this is a challenge that a lot of HR teams are grappling now with, because traditionally in Asia Pacific, perhaps we've been focused more in having a full-time staff in office and permanent workers. Now, as we're allowing people to go part-time and we're going hybrid and remote, we do know our research is showing that while organizations say they have equitable pay and benefits, the reality is that organizations, including managers, actually value face-to-face time more than remote working. And if this translates to performance management as well as advancement, then the tricky thing is that if the employees who are working remotely are not finding it equitable, they're likely to leave your organization. And then what I would really like to focus on today is the wonderful combination of the experiential and emotional elements of the EVP. So we're talking about how remote workers, research has shown that essentially they feel more job anxiety because they're working individually by themselves a lot more. And they're not having those kind of normal feedback channels that we usually have. You know, in the office, it's just so easy to connect to your colleague or to your leader to ask for feedback. You can read a lot of nonverbal cues about how you're performing, you know, whether they're accepting you and whether you're doing well in the organization. All that is lost when you're spending a lot more time by yourself. Remote workers really need to be supported by proactive communication about the clear career paths, their growth opportunities, as well as to help them really connect to a sense of purpose. We know that oftentimes remote employees feel disconnected from organization because essentially you're not in the buzz of things. You know, you're not interacting directly with the customers, or you're not hearing the teams next to you sharing about the great things that you've been doing in terms of revenue and goals and new areas of work. And so it's very, very easy to just see yourself as a taskmaster, you know, just achieve what the manager is giving you and not really feeling that you want to go the extra mile for the organization. So these things are elements that we really need to pay attention to for a remote workforce. And how you do it is through a continuous employee listening approach. And we see a lot of organizations really stepping up on this, which is great. Surveys, focus groups, and I see for hybrid workforce, people are coming into office and having coffee chats with people. So leaders are being very empathetic in this space, and we'll need to continue this on even as the pandemic ends. So over here, you have a picture of Lamont Marcel, who I watched live as he crossed the finishing line for the 100-meter dash at the Tokyo Olympics. I was really inspired because what struck me about what the commentator said was that he actually looked really relaxed as he won the 100-meter race, and everybody else looked like they were struggling and huffing and puffing. So my question for you today is, we know that learners learn best when they're in the stretch zone and not in the stress zone. So how might we create a great remote working experience as our organizations race to upskill and reskill? So first of all, I talked about well-being. So well-being, we know tons of research is coming out now that essentially in our research, 65% of APAC employees feel they cannot disconnect from work. Over here, you see that more than 80% in another survey says that they're continually overworking, including on rest days. And we do know that in terms of transformation efforts, there are just too many priorities distracting teams and leaders, and people are feeling incredibly tired. So what really needs to happen is empathetic listening by leaders and the HR teams, that as we identify skills gaps that our teams have, we're also very empathetic that according to the different situations of people at home, especially in the pandemic, when we know that a lot of people are juggling with caregiving issues, or there might be certain financial stress factors that are happening in their lives, we do need to be empathetic about learning timelines and about how much they need to learn and by when. Because we really need learners to internalize the learning, apply it at work, rather than just sort of tick the box and complete that digital learning. Next, I want to talk about careers. So I know that many of you are undergoing huge amounts of transformation when it comes to the career and learning space. We're seeing a lot of organizations refreshing the competency models to evolve it to be more skills-based, away from age, tenure, or experience. We're also seeing people roll out and catalog a lot of new kinds of future skills, as you see that your organization has developed your workforce plan and you know that certain core skills like maybe design thinking, data analytics are being tagged to certain jobs. And these are the jobs that need to change in the next few years. So the final thing that I'm also seeing a lot with HR digital transformation. So it's very exciting. A lot of you are adopting new technologies when it comes to learning platforms. We have an incredible amount of choice right now. And the challenge for us is, as we do all of this, how are we empowering the remote worker to actually be self-motivated to come along this change journey? So the starting place is really with purpose, because you want them to be self-motivated about their future that they see in your organization, and being very clear and having an action plan on how to go there. So what I'm sharing is not new to you. A lot of us have coaching cultures in our organization. I think what's new for a remote workforce is really how do you translate it into a hybrid and a virtual setting in which people have an inclusive access to a coach, whether or not they're a part-time worker, whether they're in office or they're remote. What we're finding is that there's a little bit of a skills gap with managers, especially in Asia Pacific, because the reality is that we're really transitioning to a new permanent remote working arrangement. So what needs to happen now is soft skills training for a lot of managers, so that their digital presence really creates that human connection, and they're able to inspire despite the form of communication they're using, whether it's written or video conferencing. A little bit of trivia is that, technology can empower, but it can also really cause malfunctioning. So research actually shows that whenever there is a 1 second lag in your video conference call, there's actually a very high chance that the person receiving that is interpreting you to not be present or to actually have some sort of negative emotion. So we're learning as the research comes out now that a lot of digital interactions have a higher chance of miscommunication and misinterpretation. So there's a lot of training that needs to happen in this space. We also need to have more transparent careers, because we know that with the remote worker, they're a little bit lost, right? I mean, if you're working from home and your manager's giving you a task, who is having that conversation with you about your future beyond the today, beyond the 3 months? We really need a platform, a digital platform where people can easily access what's the latest in terms of the refresh skills-based competency models, in terms of the refresh new learning pathways you have that are tagged to the different vertical career levels, as well as how they can horizontally move across the organization. So what we are seeing now is that, often when HR and business leaders talk about digital transformation, talk about people strategy transformation, a lot of it's happening in the boardrooms, it's happening with the executive committee in closed doors. If we think about change management, it's really essential to engage our remote workforce all the time and right from the start. So once you have a certain level of confidence around your core competency skills, which are future ready, it's time to really talk to your leaders and managers, seed the ideas, maybe do a couple of webinars around core skills like design thinking, agile, just to get them thinking about it and understanding that things are changing in terms of their skills expectations. So ongoing communication, even if it's bite-sized, even if it's early days, as long as you caveat and say, things are evolving, we're learning as we're going, is incredibly healthy and a great way to engage a remote workforce. Otherwise, people talk about 2021 really being the year of the great vaccination. So we really don't want that happening to all of us. So next, I talked about being transparent about the now. What are the skills they need now for their current job role? Another thing that a lot of you are doing is already identifying future job roles that your current workforce does not have, that you're solving through a buy strategy, but you also know it's not sustainable, it's very costly, and you need to build these skills within your organization, even though it's taking longer. So we're finding that a lot of people are having job anxiety because they are constantly reading about the future of work, about automation replacing jobs, and the reality of the pandemic. I myself, as last year undergoing lockdown and hearing stories about friends and family losing jobs and projects being frozen, I experienced that myself, and I can imagine if you just multiply that across your organization, a lot of that fear and anxiety remains in a lot of the remote working arrangements where the uncertainty is still happening. So what we really recommend is transparency about the future. So as you are creating all these new job roles, a lot of the leading organizations are starting to harness technology to create very easily accessible one-stop internal transparent workplaces where HR or departments are posting up gig jobs or new kinds of part-time jobs or even projects so that people can see what are the new jobs and projects that are coming up, what are the new skill sets that I need to have to move into those job skills. And even if it takes more than a few months, it might take a few years to get there, they have a very clear vision and a plan to get there. We're also hearing leading organizations like global banks, they're actually giving sabbaticals to people because they recognize that you need deeper skills in areas like machine learning or data analytics that may even require like a master's program or full focus studies. So if we put it all together, it's really about redesigning for the great skilling experience. And I invite you to think about what the new 70-20-10 looks like. Because if you think about it, a lot of us are focused about the 10. We're purchasing new digital learnings. We're very excited about the new learning platforms that we can use. And at the same time, most of our learning is actually very practical, it's on the job. But what does it mean to be on the job when I'm actually working from home? So we actually need to reskill and engage our managers and team members to actually rethink what does mentoring, what does coaching on the job mean for us? And actually creating those proactive opportunities for that to happen. I'm also wondering whether or not as you create these virtual communities of experts on your new learning platforms, are you doing enough change management to create buzz so that you have the right champions actively sponsoring certain communities and making it happen for you, and also creating that blended learning approach where you know that certain things like soft skills are actually better learned in person. So it's really a learning journey for a lot of us, especially in Asia Pacific. It's really about experimenting, HR and business leaders, not just trying to do it by yourself, but finding passionate champions to really help you along the way and keep sharing these success stories to really make it go viral in your organization. So if I just put it all together, this looks beautiful on a piece of paper, lots of color and looks, absolutely structured. I'll be honest to say that I think a lot of us now are trying to get to this amazing future state, and we're in the early progress of putting it all together. So how does it really look when we have a great future state for remote career experiences? It's when we're really inclusive right from the start. We're motivating them to find their own sense of purpose, where they want to go in your organization. They're excited to stay and they're excited that they can move on. And it doesn't matter whether or not they're remote working, they're in person, or they're actually, part-time. Everybody feels it's very equitable. I have equal access to a coach and I have equal job opportunities for me to grow in this organization. And then you're integrating everything onto one seamless platform where some technological learning platform providers are putting up your competency models on the same page with your learning space. So that's wonderful because it's very user-friendly. We talked about how we're just so used to purchasing things on Amazon and other kinds of platforms where every information is easily accessible it's easily tagged, and it has a very clear workflow so that we actually have that seamless experience. So we're really working towards that seamless experience of being coached, capturing your purpose, your future goals, what you need to do. And then we're going into looking at the competency models, being very clear about how I move up vertically, how I could potentially move horizontally, and having that conversation with my virtual coach. And that, of course, happens because we've already assessed our skill gaps. We know exactly the learning path that we need to go into. And then we're actually enabled by technology that is enhanced by AI, that's pushing out the right modules around the future skills that are needed for us to move into those job roles. And we know that skills are constantly being updated. So I'm seeing a lot of these powerful learning experience platforms actually partner up with other categorizations of skill libraries to make sure that on the go, real time, the skills are being updated so that even if you're looking at the skills this year, it's not static. It may change next year or even in the next few months. So there's this constant personalization and powering of technology to create this end-to-end experience. It'll be really wonderful if we get there soon. And I would love to hear your views on your success stories as we enter this early stage. So I'm going to end off with takeaways. So always start with empowerment. The remote worker really needs to be self-motivated to develop their own career path and identify the skills they need. Be incredibly transparent as you are evolving your career pathways and new learning pathways so that people are very clear about the action they need to take and inspired to be part of the journey. And then finally, the highest return on investment is when your skilling experience is really aligned to your business needs. So I leave you with this last question to throw it out there on a day to ruminate. How might you really create a great remote workforce experience to be a really sustainable future for your organization?
Excellent. Thank you, Jiejun. Thank you, Natalie. That was a great presentation. And we actually have quite a bit of questions coming in already. So I'm going to start off to ask the first question. The first question is about, is it really difficult to recruit without remote work or flexible work? If we want to implement flexible work, where to start?
Yeah, sure. So my understanding of that question is, can we recruit without offering remote work? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I would say. Yeah.
Okay. I think this goes down to two parts. I think when employees or potential talent, I guess, looking for a job right now, they do ask about culture and they do desire or want a bit of flexibility in their jobs. So I would say it is important to offer. Now, I think industry to industry may vary a little bit, but overall, I think it is an important element. But on top of that is just, I think as an organization, your company needs to really think about retention. So every single study we've seen have said the Gen Zs, the millennials, they want flexibility. So we can't escape it, I would say. I would say it will make it more challenging to hire, and I think it will really make it more challenging to retain if you don't offer flexibility. And I think it's a very daunting thing initially, pre-COVID, when everyone was talking about flexibility. Everyone was like, no, I absolutely don't want to offer it. But like we said, it's the new norm. I think we really just need to consider it now.
Yeah, and just to build on that, we're actually seeing research that flexible work doesn't just appeal to millennials and Gen Zers, but actually just to a more diverse workforce. So I came across this World Economic Forum case study of a global insurer where they actually relooked a lot of their job ads to see what could be done remotely because they wanted to increase their gender diversity in their organization. So the hypothesis was that females, because they tend to have a greater burden of caregiving, they would prefer to have more flexible work arrangements and even remote work arrangements. The surprise was when they put all those ads out, there was actually a doubling of the applicants that came in, which was both from men and women, which shows that basically if you create a remote working experience, you basically have a more diverse talent pool coming in. Then of course, they had about 30% more females actually being hired into senior roles as a result of the change in just the job ads. So a very quick stat is we are seeing, based on World Economic Forum research and ours, actually a lot of jobs now with technology, it can be done remotely or at least in a hybrid model. It's just about reskilling people to get comfortable, like putting things on shared document systems, being comfortable with video conferences. But there is just so much potential to tap on diverse talent when we move this way.
Thank you. There's another question coming in around skills. So we talked about upskilling and reskilling for the workforce, but the question is actually for HR personnel. So what are some of the new skills HR personnel should take on these days?
Okay. Well, I was having a conversation with my global consultancy team that specializes in learning, and they said one big thing they're seeing that organizations are paying for is for HRBPs, the business partners, to actually understand the technical skills that the businesses need more actually. Because the businesses are feeling that if they have more access to the technical skills, understanding also business strategy, that actually better to partner the businesses to translate it to career pathways and learning and development. So we're actually seeing an uptake on that. So that's quite interesting. We're also seeing workforce design because a lot of organizations are optimizing team structures because of the pandemic and also because of the impact of technology. So, very simple examples of if you are launching robotic process automation, there's obviously certain kinds of jobs where they are significantly reduced. If you have data entry technicians, doing manual work, then you need to think about how to redesign their job and actually which skills actually help them move up into a different level. So I would say accompanying that, actually a really big part is change management skills. I think a lot of what HR is doing now is change. You are implementing new technology systems, you're changing your competency models, you are, like coaching managers and leaders to have the soft skills to work virtually and teams as well. So every single time it's about change communications, even running virtual workshops to really engage people and getting them really comfortable to share their candid views.
Yeah, I think just from a recruitment perspective, we've seen a lot of uptake in talent acquisition because everyone's hiring and going through transformation. So we need talent and we're all competing with each other for the same talent. And secondly, I agree, sort of OD, L&D, HRBPs. So then this goes down to skills and for the future, what sort of skills are people looking for when they're hiring right now? And it goes to exactly what JJ was talking. Every organization is going through transformation. So that project management experience, it can be from like a HR systems or it could be to a different other project. That experience is really, really essential that employers are looking for. And then I would say is soft skills. This comes down to what the HRP, the core of it is really around communication and coaching. So if you can get experience or exposure or put into just practice a little bit more around this, these are real solid skills that people are looking for and will be valuable in the following years because digital transformation is going to be a journey. It's going to take quite a few years.
Yeah. Actually, even to build on that, I would say the soft skills is still a digital element. So I was talking to a couple of MBA students I was running a workshop from, and when we talked about soft skills, they acknowledged that, I may have a great presence in person, but digitally it's really different, and so it's interesting, is that interaction between digital and human touch, and what does that look like in the new normal?
Yeah.
All right, I guess before we close off, I just want to ask one more question. And this is actually a question I want to ask because it's from sort of personal experience from friends that asked me of how they feel. They started on a job recently either in Singapore and Hong Kong as well on the regional role. And they started to say, okay, they don't feel belong to the organization or people in the company. So one of the questions here as well is asking, how to improve and build on people culture through remote working, or especially, working models like today is like in and out of the office where some teams are actually absolutely not there. You don't see them, especially with the new workplace. How do you build on that, and how to build that feeling of belonging, especially maybe from an onboarding process or afterwards?
I think we can look at it from two parts, right? One part as the employee. So I've just onboarded, I don't know any of my colleagues and so forth. Look, I think, 101, speak to your manager, right? I think it's important to provide a little bit of feedback and create the right rules of engagement on how to communicate or better to communicate. And then I think off the back of that, then you can maybe work out tasks or things that you can do as a team virtually, or if you're lucky in Hong Kong, for example, maybe a lot of people don't go into the office, but they might go out for a lunch with their colleagues every 2 weeks, right? To kind of build that level of engagement. And I think from the line manager's perspective, this goes back to HR, all line managers. We do really need to rethink how we onboard and how we engage and how we manage from day to day when I can't have that spontaneous touch point, right? It's more like, can you talk in 30 minutes and so forth? Then we need to find a way to substitute it. And I think giving it thought and some personal touch can make a huge difference. One example, one of the managers in my team, this was when COVID was on, no one's seen anyone. We had a new person on board, and it was this person's birthday. So she arranged for a meeting for the whole team to go online, and she arranged for a cake to be delivered to their home. And that really left, I think, a very memorable experience for the employee. But this goes back to us as line managers or the HR to teach our line managers that we need to be compassionate and rethink how we engage, is how I kind of feel.
Yeah, I love your stories. I mean, I had a flashback that during lockdown, one great experience was when one of the partners actually ordered coffee for the whole team, and then it got delivered at the same time. And then we were on a virtual team call, and we all held up our coffee and kind of drank it together. So it's kind of like translating the big question is, right, how do you replicate the in-person bonding virtually? And I think all of us are just trying to be really creative about it. I mean, we could talk forever or Google up all these different tricks and tips. I think my big question is always, like, with employee engagement, always just ask your team. Let's be real that we now may feel a little bit disconnected from each other. And what are some great ideas you have? And let's just try it out. So, every week, try something different, ask people whether they like it. If it doesn't work, try something else. I would say the tricky thing about Asian culture is, I think especially as newcomers, they tend to be a bit tentative and they don't feel like they can proactively reach out. So I think maybe for remote workers who are newcomers, the managers and the peers, you may have to appoint like a buddy, just so that that person has the responsibility to be proactive and say, how are you doing and things like that. And then try to be creative with very different things. So my personal experience is I had an intern who on a call, like he had a lot of things to say, but didn't dare say it to a more senior person. And so I didn't want to embarrass him online, and I went offline and I mentored him by just putting him on a video call. I said, we can put our cameras off, but I'll just be on for 1 hour or 2 hours. If you want to ask me anything, just talk to me on the Zoom, but we'll just keep our cameras off and we can just keep working at it. So there are all these interesting things you can try out and see whether it works and it lands with all your team members. Yeah.
Thank you, JJ. Thanks, Natalie. That's about time for today. I want to thank everyone for attending, and thank you both, Natalie and JJ, for sharing your thoughts. If you do have any more questions, please feel free to email us. When we share our presentation decks, we will have both of our contact information there. So with that, then, thank you everyone again for attending today, and we hope to hear from you soon. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.